This is the FYI on Youth Ministry, a youth ministry podcast from the Fuller Youth Institute. This season, we have something a little different for you. We're bringing you audio versions of some of our favorite FYI blog posts. So, enjoy hearing a short behind-the-scenes introduction and the article read by the authors. This week, Andy Jung shares his article, Reframing the Work of Youth Leaders. But first, let's hear what young people had to say about today's topic.
What kinds of things can a youth leader do to help other adults understand your generation better?
You know, none of us are like bad people, even though we may do like bad things. Just say something that's like, they're all trying their hardest and everyone's at different spots in life. You don't necessarily know what they're going through. So like, just having a little bit of grace for them.
Or they can just like talk to each other and be like, this kid is struggling with this. And like, it might not feel like that big of a deal to you as an adult, but to them as a kid who's going through this right now, like it seems like a really big deal to them. So just kind of like listen to them and don't invalidate like their struggles.
Hey everyone, I'm Andy Jung. I am the FYI Senior Director of Church Engagement, but I also get to serve as a bridge builder at Trinity Baptist Church. And here's what I mean by bridge builder. I get to connect our young adults in the church with the rest of the congregation. And that's my role in the church. And it's awesome. After talking with churches and senior leaders about their ministry with youth, I was frustrated because we were still pigeonholing our youth leaders in their specific role in the church. And I hear way too much about the siloed ministries that were happening everywhere. Since FYI's primary audience is youth leaders, I decided to write somewhat of an open letter to our youth leaders that change really has to start with us envisioning our roles differently. As I was reflecting on my journey in youth ministry, I was really reminded of God's grace. Even though I didn't know much about ministry in those early days, God still used me to make an impact on young people. And I still keep up with so many of them. Yet, I want churches to be a place where young people can really thrive so that we can keep learning and striving to help them experience a place of belonging in the church. So we can't just stop right here, and we can't just say God's grace is going to cover everything, but we have to put in the hard work, and we have to help our churches learn what it means to be a church where young people can really find their place. I really do hope youth leaders will see themselves as someone who's called to influence really the whole church and not just a small segment of the church, or not just in youth ministry. Because until we see ourselves as leaders of the whole church, we'll continue to perpetuate this siloed ministry idea, and that will continue to go on. So we have to break out of that. Here is the article I wrote titled, Reframing the Work of Youth Leaders. I started in youth ministry when I was just 19 years old. I had just finished my first year of college. Back in that summer of 1993, I signed up to participate in this denominational program that sent college students into small churches to serve as the youth leader for the summer. I was assigned to a small church in North Carolina where I spent the summer leading Bible studies, hanging out with teenagers, and taking the group to summer camp. It was a great experience. Not for the young people maybe, but even for me and my own spiritual growth and leadership development. But let's be honest, I had no idea what I was doing. And reflecting on that experience makes me ask, hey, what's the role of a youth leader in church? Like when I was a new youth leader, I thought my role was to try to recreate the youth ministry that I experienced as a teenager. I tried to lead in the same way that my youth leader, who I loved and adored, did back at home. And I wanted the students at that small church to love being part of the youth group as much as I did when I was their age. I even went as far as directing a youth musical, just like I had experienced. And I can't even read music. So I'd like to apologize to those students, to the parents, and to the church for having to endure that awful performance. But yet they were so gracious to me. By the grace of God, that summer went well enough for the church to really invite me back throughout the next school year and the following summer. Most of us went into youth ministry because we love young people and we want them to experience Jesus like we did when we were in middle school and high school. We knew how to connect with teenagers. We know how to speak their language, and we know how to match their energy. So, what are the qualities of a good youth leader? Most of the time, the church saw us, or at least expected us to be, what my friend Mark DeVries referred to in his book, Sustainable Youth Ministry, as the kind of the youth ministry superstar, air quotes. Dynamic, top-notch, committed, magnetic, relational, creative, organized, theologically deep, and a great communicator. If we're again being honest, I wonder how many of us saw ourselves as the superstar when we first started in ministry. I'll admit that more than once, my thoughts have actually been more along the lines of, parents, just bring your students to youth group activities and I'll make sure that they experience Jesus and become good Christians. The churches I've served were more than happy to let me shape ministry any way I wanted in the quote unquote youth room, as long as their teens remained interested and engaged. And parents were happy as long as they didn't have to fight with their teenagers about coming to church, since the expectation was to do whatever it takes to keep youth wanting to attend regularly. We created programs and we planned retreats and mission trips that excited them to make them want to keep coming back. And all of this resulted in siloed youth ministry that created what has come to be known as this one-eared Mickey Mouse model of youth ministry. Youth leaders were seen as program directors, not as called leaders whose job is to guide and shepherd the church to better disciple teenagers together. And after decades of youth ministry being led in this way, we now face a tall mountain to climb in order to change how youth ministry is really viewed by the leaders and adults in the church. In his book, Adoptive Church, Chap shares a renewed vision for youth ministry that I love. Chap presents a view of youth ministry that focuses on helping each and every young person find their place as a faithful follower of Jesus Christ and live as a specifically called agent in the mission of God alongside the family of believers. I love what Chap says there. When young people are adopted into God's kingdom as God's sons and daughters and adopted into the body of Christ and the local church family, youth ministry shifts from ministry for teenagers to ministry with teenagers. And I believe it's the role of the youth leader. It's our role to help the adults in the church to understand this shift in youth ministry that's needed for today's young people. An important part of that shift is changing the role of the youth leader, or how we view the role of the youth leader. So how do we as youth leaders change how people in the church see us? And how do we change the role that we play in leading young people as they become lifelong followers of Jesus? Let me share 4 ways that we can start making that change. The first way we can reframe our role is to change how we view ourselves. Change has to begin with us. So how do we understand our own calling? In most churches, the structure is set up for us to play the role of a program director. It may even be your job title. Yet, Is this how we really truly view our work and ministry? Are we called to lead just the youth ministry? Or are we called to lead the entire church to better understand today's young people and how to invest relationally in them? I think we're called to a bigger role. We stay awake at night worrying about young people in our ministry. We show up to middle school volleyball games, to school plays, band concerts, swim meets, and whatever else our students are involved in so that they know we love them. We run ourselves ragged to create programming that youth will be excited about. We plan mission trips that will be life-changing and spend hours preparing Bible studies that will convince teenagers to fall in love with Jesus. We make sacrifices, even to our own detriment sometimes, so that young people will love the church. And we do all of these things because we think it is just up to us. We think that is the job of a youth leader. But perhaps we have to stop seeing ourselves as the superstar. It's essential for us to see ourselves as the one charged to lead all adults in the church as they invest relationally in our teenagers. And we do this so that our students come to know that their identity is in Jesus, to experience a sense of belonging in God's family, and to live out their purpose through the church. Our leadership isn't just to direct programming designed for teenagers, but it's also to help adults in the church to better understand today's young people, to build empathetic relationships across generations, to offer training that can help adults feel more comfortable relating with their young people, and walk alongside parents and caregivers to support spiritual growth at home. So until we see ourselves in this expanded role, we'll not be able to help others change how they see us and how they understand the real purpose of the church's ministry to young people. The second thing you can do to reframe our role as youth leaders is to develop and cast a vision. While we grow as leaders who are called to lead the entire church in caring for and discipling our young people, we need to ground our new vision in deep theology. The image of being God's sons or daughters is found throughout the New Testament. In John 1:12, we read, "To all who did receive Christ, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God." Romans 8:15 says, "You did not receive a spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you received the spirit of adoption when we cry, 'Abba, Father.'" These scriptures and many others remind us that in Christ, God made a way for us to be God's sons and daughters. The role of youth ministry should be to help young people understand that through faith in Jesus, that we're adopted into God's family and that they play an important part in that family. So once we've changed our own view, we can start helping others in the church to catch that new vision. We cast that vision by being willing to have tough conversations, to advocate for a new model that brings youth ministry into the central life of the church, rather than being disconnected or siloed into its own space. We need to consistently tell stories of how teenagers have brought vitality to not only to the youth ministry, but to the whole church. So let's tell stories of how older adults have impacted the young people and how young people have helped older adults in the church. And these stories can help bring everyone together to clarify this new vision that we want to cast. A third suggestion is this: we need to build a team. We've got to quit being the superstar and the Lone Ranger. Investing in parents and caring Christian adults who will walk alongside our teenagers on their faith journey is really vital part of youth ministry. And it's a vital part of the youth ministry that is sometimes forgotten. So we're on the same team as the parents. Our goals are the same. We want our young people to become lifelong followers of Jesus. We want them to have a vibrant faith that informs every aspect of their lives. Our role as a youth leader is to help resource, equip, and support parents and caregivers as they lead their young people in faith development. Here are a few ways youth leaders can walk alongside parents as partners. We can offer parent training opportunities. We can provide resources for parents to have better conversations at home. And we can communicate with parents on what their teenagers are learning at church so that they can also have similar conversations at home. Caring Christian adults and mentors who can support teenagers on the journey of faith are also a part of our team. One of our key sticky faith findings was that young people need a web of relationships with adults who can support their faith formation. Our 5-to-1 principle suggests making sure that every teenager in our ministry has at least 5 adults, not including their parents, who are investing relationally in them. Ideally, the adults in their lives are trusted enough for young people to feel comfortable sharing both their joys and their pains they're experiencing in their lives. And that takes trust. And it's hard for young people to trust adults these days. And that's why we've got to invest relationally in our young people. And I know that 5 adults can seem overwhelming at times. So we start with 1. We work to make sure that every young person in our ministry has at least 1 adult that they can trust and develop a relationship with. And then we work towards that 2nd adult and then the 3rd. So let's not let the 5-to-1 principle overwhelm us so that we don't do anything. We do it starting with 1 and building up to 2 and 3 and so on. Intergenerational relationships within the church will help provide teenagers with the models of faith that they can emulate. They need to see models of adults living out their faith every day. And that helps to keep them connected to the larger church body. The last suggestion for reframing our leadership is to create safe spaces for our youth and adults to engage in deep conversations. We've got to start having better conversations in our ministry. I once worked with a senior leader who often reminded me when ministry got really complicated that all he really wanted to do was play ping pong with college students when he was called into ministry. And you may feel like this often. You went into youth ministry to hang out with students and to point them to Jesus. You didn't sign up for all the other stuff that's in youth ministry. And now you just feel like you're barely keeping your head above water to get from one Sunday to the next. I know that feeling. Yet as we build a team of intergenerational adults who are relationally investing in our teenagers, our youth ministries need to create safe spaces for youth and adults to have meaningful conversations around the questions young people are asking the most. In the book, 3 Big Questions That Change Every Teenager, we at FYI look at 3 core questions teenagers are asking. Who am I? Where do I fit? What difference can I make? And young people's pursuit of answers around identity, belonging, and purpose can often be intense and ultimately drive how they engage every aspect of their lives. Unfortunately, teenagers often find unhelpful or unhealthy answers to these huge questions. But when we cultivate safety, our youth ministries can be a place where teenagers can have deep conversations about finding identity in a relationship with Jesus. We can make room for conversations about how they are part of the family of God and how they've been uniquely gifted and called to be a part of God's greater story. Within these conversations, they learn how to be more faithful disciples of Jesus. So even as you reframe your role as a youth leader, our mission hasn't changed. So friends, be encouraged. The calling hasn't changed. We want to be part of our teenagers' lives. We want them to know Jesus as a close friend. We want them to experience the abundant life Jesus promised in John 10:10. And we want them to be an integral part of the whole church. So the mission hasn't changed, but maybe our strategies should. And that shift in strategy begins with reframing our own role in the church. So friends, as we close today, I just want to offer this prayer and benediction. May God remind you of your identity with Jesus. May you know you belong to God's great big family. And may you know that God has called you to shape the church, to care for every young person. May it be so. Amen.
This podcast is one of the many free resources produced by the Fuller Youth Institute. You can find similar resources at fulleryouthinstitute.org/blog or in your inbox if you sign up for our newsletter. Check out the show notes for links to all the resources mentioned in today's episode. And thanks so much for listening. Finally, here is one more thought from a young person.
What's one thing that's not necessarily a superstar quality that you need from a youth leader?
I think vulnerability. Like, all the youth leaders that I have really loved and connected with are not afraid to be human. I think it's a combination of, like, I'm very open about my entire faith journey, and, like, I will talk to you about my life. And also, like, I'm very open about what my life is right now, and yeah, not shying away from making mistakes or needing to take a break or like things like that, because we're all human, and I think it's important to see your leaders as people too.